Howdy, everyone. My name is Emily Taylor Welty, and as Michael mentioned, I'm the architecture program director here at Tulane School of Architecture and Built Environment. I'm also an architect here in New Orleans. I have a small practice called Collectivo, where we like to say we make stuff and do things. But I'm going to talk to you today about the graduate architecture program at the school. And I wanted to start with a little bit of an overview of where we're located and why. And like before I jump into that, I just want to say, I've heard Dean all day speak at events like this, and I think some of the things he says resonates with me as well, which is just for any of you, like, I think if you're watching this, you think you want to be an architect or know you want to be an architect. And I'll just say for me personally, how gratifying and exciting it is to be someone who just shapes the spaces that we all inhabit in a day-to-day way. And you're kind of it's a profession that's incredibly gratifying in that way because you're imagining and creating the stage that life kind of unfolds on. And it's like what a privilege to be able to do that. And it's really exciting to see places that you've imagined come to life and be beloved and used by people. And yeah, I think if you're here, you know you want to be an architect, but if you're on the fence about that, I will say it's an incredible profession, and I would encourage you all to give it a shot. So I'll talk a little bit about this place. As I mentioned, the region, kind of where we're at and why, and how we see ourselves at the Tulane School of Architecture and Built Environment. And to start with, I'll say we are located at the foot of the Mississippi River in this incredible city, New Orleans. And as rich as we are in so much cultural and architectural history and diversity, we're also in a really precarious place. We're at the mouth of a river that is, increasingly at the threat of sea level rise, of some of the social and environmental inequities that we see in all of our cities and coastal places around the world. And I think because of that, we've really leaned into this idea that we we are here, we are committed to this place, and that the things that we research and discover and do in this place are applicable to coastal cities and river and delta cities around the world. And so it's really an attention to the local that has global implications. And that's not the only work we do, but that's certainly a thread that runs through a lot of the studios and research here at the school. New Orleans, for those of you who haven't visited, it's a really amazing city, so much steeped in so much cultural and musical and what's the word, culinary diversity. So much here to explore as a city, beyond just the confines of the school. And I'll say that a lot of our classes are really engaged and deeply embedded in the nonprofits and communities of the city. But then also Tulane as a university, I think it's useful to know a little bit about the origin stories. When Tulane first started, over 100 years ago, part of the core mission of the institution was to address the yellow fever epidemic that was raging through the city. And so the university has baked into its DNA, yes, a deep research agenda, but also the idea that that research gets applied to the betterment of the city and the world. And so we made it through yellow fever. We're here today. And, what we do today is imagining the world of tomorrow so that New Orleans and other cities like ours are thriving in the future as well. As far as the School of Architecture is concerned, School of Architecture and Built Environment, our mission is to generate and apply knowledge that addresses urgent challenges of humankind. That's kind of what I was getting at when I mentioned the yellow fever, but very much you'll see in a lot of the studios, you'll get a window into some of the research studios that are happening here later in this presentation. But again, it's just like understanding how our school is one that's a hub for architectural research, for design excellence and action. Like how do we take that knowledge and apply it in ways that are have impact and are meaningful in our communities. We've got an incredible faculty. This is just the architecture faculty that I'm showing here, but an incredible world-class faculty that's coming from a range of different backgrounds and different practice locations as well. This is a global faculty that have won quite a few awards just over the last few months, but certainly over the last few years. And I think you'll see in here some really incredible established seasoned professors and also some very new and upcoming young voices in the profession and in academia. In terms of our graduate program, I think it's useful to talk a little bit about the curricular arc, just so you understand kind of how we do studios and how we do our sequence of courses here at Tulane. And then also we're going to hear, as Michael said, from a few of our faculty and students about their own experiences. So in terms of the curriculum for our graduate program, I'm going to talk right now about the full 3.5 year program. That's not everyone that's on this call. Some of you may be advanced standing, but I think it's useful to understand kind of the themes of the studios that you go through. And there are, of course, co-requisite classes that are happening as well. Some that are in support or scaffolding that learning that's in studio, some that are their own standalone courses and areas of knowledge that we ask you to engage in. In our 3.5 year program, we start with an intensive summer that's really about culture, like the culture of architecture school, but also understanding the kind of like cultural underpinnings of design and architecture. And we're jumping very quickly into shelter design, small project design that's engaging with human dimensions and the landscape that it sits within. And then in the very first full academic year, the fall semester is a site studio that's looking at the spillway and it's engaging with environmental issues and issues that I referenced of climate change and how to build in ways that are responsive to site and a changing site. In the spring semester, we move into a collective housing studio. And so again, looking at the human dimension, but thinking about residential design as units, but that can also aggregate in new and compelling ways to form more collective housing situations that add density and affordability to the table. By the second year, we're looking at adaptive reuse and kind of urban scale interventions. And year 2 concludes with an integrated studio, sometimes called comprehensive studio at different universities. But that's a real threshold moment for students here and in other places as well. It's where you kind of show your ability to synthesize structure and mechanical and zoning and code and a lot of different inputs into a comprehensive design project. And after you get through that threshold, then there's a lot more kind of options in the targeted research that you might elect into. So we have what we call the research studios. And you'll hear more from some of our research studio instructors about some of the variety of topics and scales of investigation that happen in the research studio level. And in the final semester, some of our graduate students opt to do a graduate thesis. Others decide to do a second research studio, and that's an option that you have here based on your own kind of interests and what you want to really focus on in terms of your own research and career trajectory. Some of you may be considering that 2-year track if you're advanced standing because you have a previous degree, maybe a 4-year degree in architecture or architectural studies that had some studio coursework in your background. For those of you looking at that 2-year track, it's essentially the same sequence of studios, but you're starting right there at the beginning of year 2 in this rundown, and you're doing those final 2 years of studies. That's a little bit, there's a lot of, what should I call it, variability in the co-requisite classes and what you get advanced standing for based on your own background and education and the syllabi from your previous coursework. That's a bit in the weeds right now, but I will say that in general terms, most of our students are either 2-year students or 3.5-year students. To just kind of dive into a few of those kind of projects and outputs, this is some work from that site studio that I mentioned. In this case, we were looking at a salt dome site on Jefferson Island, and students were developing like a museum and cultural resource center. This is some work from that integrated studio that I talked about, where students are being asked to synthesize, again, structure, mechanical, electrical, codes, zoning, facade systems. A lot of different things are coming together to create a comprehensive design proposal. And then after that moment is when students jump into research studios. This is what I mentioned as a chance to engage with a range of different scales and interests and research agendas based on your own interests and where you imagine yourself going in terms of your career, whether academic or professional. These are a few examples of some work that have happened. This is the NAS Climate Futures Studio, Gulf Futures Studio, and this is being led by Liz Kamudi and Margarita Jover. And so they're working at a regional scale, looking at the Gulf Coast and a lot of different ways to intervene on that kind of regional scale to address some of the urgent issues that we were talking about a little earlier. We've got, other studios like this one that was led by Kentaro Tsubaki that was engaging at the scale of a detail, in this case, precast concrete units, whether a paver or kind of water management infrastructure scale, and how those start to aggregate and really make a difference in the flow of water, decreasing the kind of intensivity of our rainstorms and holding more rainwater on site as the city kind of like city pumps catch up to manage a lot of the floodwaters that come through the city. And then you'll hear a lot more about this from Jess, but we also have studios. It's not just regional or paver scale, a lot of things in between that are engaging with the scale of the building. Wendy Redfield has been doing a tectonic studio that's based in Switzerland recently. This is an example of some work from Pankaj and Dean Alday's studio that was the Yamuna River studio. And again, you'll hear more about that from Jess in its most recent iteration. I'll say the research studios, we have this incredible opportunity, thanks to the Mintz family, to take students abroad in various different studio contexts. Some of these funded research studios that have happened in the past include a studio in Ethiopia that was run by Ruben. We have a studio that was happening in Barbados and one in Ecuador. This is a chance for you all as students to go on these global research studio trips for, usually during spring break or fall break for 12 or so days, and really be on the ground in kind of a funded way and get to know the sites that are challenging a range of different scales and complexities, as I mentioned, but really in a less abstract way, in a more on the ground way, and understanding, again, not just New Orleans and how what we do here relates to global issues, but also getting y'all out around the world and like engaging with issues in other places as well. Our current Mintz Global Studios there's one happening in Chile, one that goes to Switzerland, and another in India. And so these are studios that happen on 3-year cycles, and students each of those 3 years get to go to these locations. Here's some really quick images of Switzerland, the Switzerland studio on the left, and the group that went to Ecuador on the right. They were in a tropical cloud forest, researching sustainability and materiality in the tropics with a research station there. This one I'm not going to dwell on again. Jess, who's wearing black in this image on the right, she's going to tell you more about the Yamuna River Project Studio and the trip that group just got back from. And then also at this research studio level is a chance for students who are interested in design build and kind of like rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty. We've got a few different opportunities here at the school. One is the one that I'm showing now is the Small Center for Collaborative Design. That's the community design center of the school, deeply engaged in a lot of the work that's going on in New Orleans neighborhoods, and engagement is a core part of that project process. And here we typically do 1-semester design build studios like this one you're seeing here, the outdoor teaching kitchen at Sugar Roots Farm. This is an award-winning program that recently has a book out. I'm just like giving that a plug if anyone's interested in knowing more about that. But the Small Center has typically 1-semester studio options where you go from idea to a built reality, including permitting and all the consultant conversations along the way in that tight 15-week semester. We also have a program called Urban Build, which many of you may have heard of, and that's our residential design build program. In the Urban Build program, we are typically doing a fall design studio and a spring build. And so that's a 2-semester project. And the students involved in that program in Urban Build, they are taking like a series of studios and going from, again, idea through permitting to completion on about a 1,200 square foot residential project in 1 academic year. And so a lot of our students, graduate and undergraduate, are really interested in these programs as well. Okay. Now, taking a little step back, let me check my time. I tend to talk kind of fast and nervously when I'm talking about all the things. That's a little bit about the curriculum. Now I'll talk some about our facilities and technology here at the school. I would guess many of you have not been to New Orleans, or certainly not to the school, but I'll tell you that we just went through a 3.5-year building renovation project. We are done. We are back in the building, and oh so happy to be there. We've got this historic building that used to be a medical school ages ago, but in the last many decades has been a school of architecture. And not only do we have the historic building that we work within and our studio spaces are and classes are happening in, but we also have this addition that was built to the back of the building. And so, we've got all the studio spaces that you may have seen if you ever came here years ago, plus some in the new addition to the building. We also have a brand new wood shop as a result of that renovation, and some ancillary spaces like Mill House, which is our 3D mill, and some makerspace as well that are just a short walk from the building. And you may hear a little bit more about some of the Fab Labs in the future too, and when Julian mentions his experience here. Let's see, a few other odds and ends, like many schools, we've got a lot of equipment, 3D printers, laser cutters, robot. I'm trying to think of all the other things. We've even got a lot of water jet cutters and things like that in the makerspace. And we also have a ceramics printer that one of our faculty members, Adam Marcus, has been leading the charge on in terms of his research studio that really looks at architectural detail in the form of ceramic facade systems. And yes, they're working at the scale of detail, but they're also thinking about how these things work at a building scale as well. And so a lot of investigations that are kind of bridging that kind of more tactile, hands-on kind of scale. I will say also we have a new faculty member, Asia Crawford, who's going to start a studio this spring that's all about biomaterials and mycelium in particular. And so at that research studio level, there's just a real range and diversity of different topics that students can plug into and join in. There's also a really healthy I don't know what you would call it. Student government is like one word for it, but like just student activities in general. There's a lot of students inside of government organizations and out that are doing a lot of different work around the school and self-driven, like driven by their own interest and determination. We have graduate government. We've got AIA student chapter, NOMAS, Women in Architecture, lots of different groups that are engaged in various and sundry things. The Charrette is a student-run publication that they produce every year. There are graduate research fellowships and summer fellowship programs here at the school. This is an image from one of our recent summers at the Small Center where we had some fellows doing a session on water management and water infrastructure. This was just a field trip to some of the city's drainage systems. There's also symposium, both at grad and undergraduate level, where the students are determining what the topic is and who the guest speakers are. There's a budget that they have to run these programs, and it's really determined by the students. We also have a really active sort of career services arm through Kristen Jones, one of the folks that works for us, runs a lot of activities like firm crawls and career days, and really works hard to make sure that our students are placed in internships and jobs beyond their academic career. So really looking to connect people with alumni networks and firms around the country and around the world during their time here at school and after as people graduate. Okay, a few other things that I just wanted to highlight while I have your time and attention. One of the things that our grad students have been engaged in at the research studio level and in thesis for sure is research and publications. And so this is just a quick slide to highlight some of the research that's been happening and presented recently at the Acadia Conference. A lot of the names that you see on this list will be faculty members, but some of the names as well, like Abbas here was working, he's an MArch student who was working with a faculty member to do some different robotics and biomaterial formwork. And so I would say I've been really impressed recently at the uptick in published research that our students are involved in and actually writing and presenting at conferences around the world. We just had a student, Jared Vogel, who went to Mexico City to present some of the work he's been working on in textiles and fabrics. Again, just a little bit more of a highlight of some of that research that our graduate students have been engaged in and presenting around the world. There was recently, I think, 4 or 5 grad students who went to Vancouver to talk about some of their recent thesis work at the ACSA National Conference. And then each year we have students who are recognized in the Metropolis Future 100. Again, both grad and undergrad, but consistently had a graduate presence in these kind of forms of recognition. And then while I'm just talking about a little bit of bragging, I'll say programs like Urban Build also get covered in things like national news outlets, who again are really attracted to this idea that students in school earning an education are also applying that knowledge in practical ways that actually affect the lives of others and transform cities in the process. So I think that's kind of it for my broad overview of our program and some of the highlights. And I want to mention before we kind of open it up to everyone else that we do have our paths of study articulated on the website if anybody's looking to learn more. And then, of course, Michael and I are very available and happy to answer questions for any of you who have questions. Okay, that's it from me. I think I'm running a little bit ahead of schedule, which gives us lots more time for Q&A, but also gives some of the other speakers a little more time to really jump into the details of what they're up to.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Now we'll move over to some faculty. Let's see, Jess, you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first.
I'll say while Jess is getting set up, I'll mention that both Jess and Sonsoles are going to talk for a bit about the work that's happening in their research studios that are underway right now in the fall semester. And so you're seeing like very exciting works in progress here and an overview of what they're up to with their students.
Yeah, great. Are we seeing my presentation in full screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you, Emily, for that, for the introduction. So my name is Vanacek. I am a new faculty member here at the Tulane School of Architecture and Built Environment, and I am a research assistant professor that is working on the Yamuna River project. So as Emily mentioned, this is the presentation I'm going to show you today is a little bit about the background of the project and also getting into what we've been doing this semester. But this is the first the first of a 3-year trajectory for this studio in particular. So a lot of our work is still very much in progress. I'm very excited about where it's at, but we'll have more of that coming out in the next month or so. So I am presenting today of my co-teacher Pankaj Veer Gupta and myself. The Yamuna River Project is a multidisciplinary initiative that was actually established by our dean Iñaki Alday and Pankaj Veer Gupta back in 2014. So this has been a long-standing initiative that has been between two different schools, both the University of Virginia and Tulane, and it's been taught by a series of instructors over the years. So this semester it's fully hosted at Tulane, and Pankaj is a practicing architect as well as the Katz Professor of Architecture and Urbanism. He is located in New Delhi, and I am located here in New Orleans, and we co-teach this studio together. So the Yamuna River Project, oh, sorry, one second. My slides are not moving. There we go. As I mentioned, is this sort of interdisciplinary initiative, and through a series of design research studios, the project seeks to develop and advance strategies for the ecological recovery of one of the most polluted rivers in the world, the Yamuna, as it runs through the megacity of New Delhi in India. So we're working in the context of northern India. Delhi is the capital of the largest democracy in the world, and the pollution of the river has become an unprecedented and urgent crisis of ecological inequality and a serious threat to the health of the entire population. That being said, the river itself is not the problem so much as it is a symptom of broader social challenges, which can only be reversed by sustained remedial action encompassing components of the city, not only the river, but social, cultural, health, economics, ecology, public space. So this is really a studio that seeks to sort of break down a multiplicity of scales between sort of the region, the city, the neighborhood, and the architectural intervention. So what we're seeing here is the region of New Delhi. At present, Delhi is a population of 35 million, and a third of that is transient. And so we're seeing kind of rapidly intense urbanization, which is having putting pressures on the river. So what we're seeing here is a photo of of the river upstream of Delhi. But as it starts to flow through Delhi, these drains actually become sort of the waste bins of the city. It's where trash is disposed of. It's where fecal matter often persists because there's no sort of infrastructure to support the growing populations. So what this studio seeks to do is kind of look at these architectural, urban, and landscape proposals that can begin to address some of these and serve as catalysts to address some of these kind of like overarching issues. So this is some work that came out of the first 5 years of the studio. So these kind of before and afters that are looking at these settlements along these drains, which used to be rivers. So again, these are examples of student projects that were often at these kind of large scale sites. So it might be landscape, it might be urban design, it might be architecture, and kind of imagining how these urban or architectural insertions can start to address some of these issues. The first 5 years of this of the project were published in the Yamuna River Project book. So this is out there. This is something you can purchase if you really want to deep dive and learn more about this. And since then, there has been, again, we're in the 10th year of the studio now. And so just to kind of talk a little bit about this methodology, it's kind of, as a research studio, it's divided into three overarching sort of parts. One is this substantial body of collective research that the studio does together. The second is the individual urban project. So students are working individually, but also collaboratively. And then a collective notion of climatic adaptation in urban cities. We sort of operate as a mini thesis studio where students are allowed to develop a scale and a typology specific to their own interests and their own readings of the city. And you'll see this in kind of the way that I'll talk about our studio for this semester. So this semester, we've kind of split the semester, or split the overall kind of out
Hey,
into
Jess.
these categories. Yeah.
Jess, sorry to interrupt you,
Yes.
but could you try to turn your camera off just to help the speed? Some of your words are getting
Yes.
garbled. Thank you.
So sorry about that. I'm trying to go quickly, but the lag, I'm sure, is there. Okay. So the way we've structured the studio is we really begin with kind of a cultural immersion through film screenings and reading discussions and sort of a spatial and material analysis, as well as precedent and multiscalar site analysis before we go to India. As Emily mentioned, this studio is funded by the MINSC. It's a MINSC Global Research Studio. And so we do include a 12-day, really 10-day trip to India over fall break. So we do this kind of really intense immersion and investigation from afar. And then we actually get to go to India. And then once we come back, we start to assess kind of all of those learnings into the final design projects. So this semester in particular, we're focused on a very specific area of New Delhi called Lutyens Delhi, which was a sort of British colonial designed plan area of the city. And you can see there's quite a change in density between some of the sort of informal settlements and then this area that is really portraying sort of opulence. And so we're operating in this kind of tight neighborhood that is really exhibiting strong urban contrasts. One of the reasons we're working in this area is actually coming on the heels of the New Delhi Municipal Council advisory study. That is, the New Delhi Municipal Council has a specific interest in a site area. And Pankaj actually served on an advisory board that was looking at the urban redevelopment for this area. So the reason I bring this up is to say that we're actually reaching much more beyond just the sort of the studio setting. And we engage with, and the project has always done this, engaging with actual government officials in terms of moving these projects forward. So when we are in the past, it's been the Delhi Jal Board, it's been DDA and other types of government officials. This semester, we're really working with the NDMC. And we're zoomed into a 2-kilometer square area of the city that is encompassing a wide range of needs. It's slated for redevelopment. There's historic tombs here. There's government housing. There are parks. And what the students have actually done, after we went to Delhi and were able to really get on the ground and see this area, they were able to, these crosses that hopefully are showing up in this slide now, is all the locations of the student projects. So every student has an individual project, but they have each defined their own scale, their own programmatic need, and their own site location. And then we're working together to kind of develop the sort of overarching master plan for the site. So some of the programmatic typologies include public bathrooms, low-income housing, streetscape design, park design, and wedding halls, schools. So it kind of ranges, and you have that ability to make that decision for yourself given what you experience on site. And so finally, I'll just conclude with some photographs from our trip. These are photographs that one of the students took of some of the different places that we went to in Shahjahanabad, which is Old Delhi. We visited historic stepwells, and we visited, of course, a lot of historic tombs and monuments. More of these kind of monuments that are ranging from, the 1400s to the 1800s. We also had the chance to visit modern precedents and precedents under construction from Pankaj's office, Veer Mueller. So we're getting kind of a range of project types to be able to see. And we also had the opportunity to meet with experts. We met with scientists in the Aravali Biodiversity Park, and then we also met with the chairman and the architect of the NDMC, the New Delhi Municipal Council. So we have these opportunities to present the work and engage with local municipalities. And of course, we ate very good food the entire time. So I'll leave it there. I will say that we also do tend to hire a graduate research fellow, as Emily mentioned. So if this is something you're interested in, not only as a studio, we're always looking for that additional help with the project beyond just the studio itself. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. I'll pass it over to Sonsolis to talk about her studio.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see full screen?
It's loading. There it is.
Okay, so welcome to this webinar. I'm Sonsoles Vela. I'm a faculty member at Tulane University. I came here in 2019, and since then it was been a pleasure for me to be teaching here. I'm going to introduce one of the research studios. As Emily mentioned, we have a kind of range of variety of studios. For example, this fall semester, we have like 6 different types of studios. And this is one that is across US. And this exactly fall semester, it's focused on San Francisco. As Emily mentioned, we save the space, but also we try to improve and restore the environment, and also all the problems that we are facing. All of us, we are facing these kind of problems. We are in a climate crisis. We face every day news that we are keeping records, which is not really what we should do, right? So that's why this research studio started under that kind of umbrella, and asking ourselves, so how we can start being part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. So this research studio is focused on the carbon emissions and how we can start designing our buildings in a kind of concept of carbon neutrality, and how that can be done not only through the design phase, but also in the material choices. So 3 different types of interactions. This year, it's, as I mentioned, located in San Francisco with adaptive reuse, taking those kind of landmarks that exist and still are abandoned. Different type of steps in the overview of the studio. So first we start a little bit knowing about the carbon and the material concept of what is that. Then we start the design exploration, and then finally how we can implement that into the design. So we start with this kind of material strategy, looking this kind of new palette material that the nature, for instance, bring us, how we can do with these kind of materials, but also the agricultural waste, what we can do also with the bioproducts, earth, why not? Also water, but of course, waste. We have tons of waste that can be repurposed, right? So those kind of materials start in a second phase, and we start looking at how we can implement that in our design. So I select a kind of case studies in which the students start to understanding how those systems can be implemented in your designs and how we can work with, for instance, mycelium, which is our mushrooms, or maybe reclaimed roof tiles. So it was originally thought that it was gonna be a kind of material for the roof, and now becomes a part of the wall. So we start looking different proposals, and then we get into the fall break, even though there is a kind of funding responsibility of each faculty member that try to get some funding in order to make those kind of trips available for everyone and for free. So then also we have the opportunity to enjoy not only the site, but also to engage with the buildings, but also with partners there. So that was when we came there. Also, we have the opportunity to enjoy the food of San Francisco. And then we started with our design strategy once we had selected the buildings and also the place. So in that design strategy, you can see some of the outcomes of these students that they have been working on my studio. So they work not only on the design, but also in the material choice. And what's the meaning of selecting one material or not, are keeping some of the materials, because this is under the concept of adaptive reuse. And what's the meaning of that in order to generate a kind of carbon budget zero. So each student select a kind of narrative for their own project, creates their own program, but also creates a kind of base for, or a kind of foundation for their future thesis or their specialty in a future. I also have to mention that this course received an award this year in the ACSA, which is the Course Development Prize. Thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Sensolis. Now we'll move to hear from some of our current students here. Let's see, Rana, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Rihanna. I am in my third year of the 3.5-year track for the Masters of Architecture program here. That means I have a non-background. I got my undergraduate degree in urban studies, took a year off, and now I'm here. And I've done quite a lot since I got to be a part of this program. There's a lot of opportunities for graduate students, especially here, which has been really wonderful. So I am a research fellow. I was a research fellow a couple summers ago for our fabrication labs. I've also been the student manager of our digital fabrication lab for the last 3 years. I've also been a research fellow for one of our professors, Juan Medina, and we're looking at adaptive reuse strategies in a little suburban neighborhood in Madrid, which has been really interesting. I'm also the architecture representative for our graduate student government. I've been a TA for a couple different studios. I was a TA for the last 2 summers for the 3.5-year summer session that we all end up going through, which has been really wonderful, as well as a TA for an undergraduate design studio. And that was really fun. And then I'm currently developing a thesis with the guidance of Margarita Jover, which is related to addressing climate crisis through a utopic city design, which was applying circular economies and construction materials to a large urban landscape, which is kind of marrying the undergraduate degree with the graduate degree that I'm receiving right now. So that's been really wonderful. It's been a really interesting road. I think it's been challenging in a lot of really wonderful ways. I've definitely seen a lot of growth in my thinking and my design processes. One of the things that I like most about the curriculum that we have here is that there's a really good balance between the theoretical side of architecture as well as the practical application of that, which I think is pretty evident through the presentations that we've seen here today. That we're really trying to address real world problems and concerns in an equitable way, and utilizing really interesting design solutions for that. And so that's been really wonderful. And the thing that really made me choose Tulane, I applied to a lot of different architecture schools after undergrad, but the thing that made me choose Tulane was when I was in my own open house for this program, and two of our professors, Kentaro and Tiffany, were speaking about kind of the culture of the school here, and they were talking about how they really take the work that they do very seriously, but they don't take themselves particularly seriously as people. They're, fun-loving. They like to go out and have a good time, and I think that that really speaks to the culture that we have here, wherein we're very dedicated to our work and our practices, and learning from each other and growing with each other. But on the same side, we like to enjoy life, and this beautiful city that we're in. I think that we're in a really unique city in the United States and in the world to learn about a wide breadth of issues, but also engage in like these beautiful ancient cultural institutions like Mardi Gras, and the culture of jazz and food here. So it's a really wonderful place to kind of grow into yourself as a designer and as a person. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got to say about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Rihanna. We'll move over to Julian, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers after that. So, Julian, you're on mute.
Hey everyone, I'm Julian. I want to say thank you to Rihanna for that beautiful description of the school and student life. That's going to be very difficult to follow. I wanted to say that I started here at Tulane, like coming from a non-architectural practice. So I have an undergrad degree in industrial design. I worked for several years before kind of intertwining my career with like climate resiliency related efforts. And work relative to affordable housing. I found Tulane super interesting because those are topics that are covered at this institution. Aside from the many of the faculty just being very personable, I found that like much of my experience here has been defined by like camaraderie and accessibility. Like, for starters, I feel like if, you have the wherewithal, anything that you feel like, you want to do, you can do it. I feel like professors are very personable. It's extremely easy to get access to, or to engage in research here at Tulane. I think as a 3.5-year student coming here, I came in with the imagination that it was going to be very difficult. Being in a new city and meeting new people, in addition to having there be beginning like, summer intensive. But again, like I felt that the way that the program articulates itself, you often find yourself in these moments where, you're even though you're in the studio like late at night working, or you have like certain deliverables or deadlines, like everyone's doing it together and you're like celebrating that and, making friends at the same time. Yeah, no, I think that's all I had to say, but thanks y'all.
Awesome, thanks. And so what I'll do now is I'll invite all of our panelists to turn their videos on, and I'll invite you participants to ask your questions. So there's a Q&A function at the bottom of the webinar. Feel free to ask your questions. I think I'll ask the first question and just see, what types of career outcomes do we see graduates going to? you know, I think typically everyone thinks working in an architecture firm, but is there anything else that we can offer with that?
I'm probably the one who's supposed to field that question, at least first.
Just
Although
toss it out.
I'd welcome any of your input. What we see most typically, like you mentioned, Michael, is people going into firms. Really, the range of practice that people engage in is highly varied. Like some people are going into really large firms on the big coastal cities. Some people are doing like much more kind of small boutique scale work, residential or commercial scale. In some of the other like other places around the region and around the world. But some of the other things that we see that are maybe a little less like a little out of the box or maybe less obvious that I've seen people do. We have graduates going into landscape architecture firms. We have graduates going into TV and film, like a lot of people that I know here in the Gulf Coast, and even there's people around the world that have graduated from here and gone into film and TV production. I think the skills that you all learn in terms of like spatial modeling and iteration and just like kind of the know-how about how to see something from idea to execution, that some of those skills you learn, the collaboration, the creative problem solving, that stuff's applicable in so many fields. And I think it's a pretty versatile education that positions people for a lot of different things if they decide architecture is not the exact thing they want to go into. We have one graduate who started his own rug making company and is doing all these crazy 3D rug print things, which speaks to a little bit of the Fab Labs expertise that both Rihanna and Julian are speaking to. Like you get experience in so many different things according to your own interests and like desires. And most people go into architecture, but not all.
Yeah. Thanks, Emily. The next questions are we're talking about financial aid opportunities at the School of Architecture, and I'll field that question. So, everyone who applies is automatically considered for all of our scholarships that we have here. We offer the main opportunity we have is merit scholarships that range from 25 to 75% of tuition. Through a review of your portfolio materials and all your application materials, we'll make determinations on that. I think the big fact here is 92% of students receive financial support from Tulane. So there are many opportunities, like I said, the merit scholarship. We also have the Boudreaux scholarships, which is talking about increasing opportunities for people in the built environment. And then we also offer this is new this year, we're offering up to 3 full-time fellowships, full tuition fellowships, which essentially is students can earn an assistantship and work in a research or teaching setting, and that is based on a review of the portfolios as well. All of these can be found on our website at our scholarships and financial aid page, which you will receive a link to at the end of this webinar in your email. Another question here is also about the historic preservation aspect of the school too. Some students have been asking about their certificate, and so Emily, could you tell us like how the historic preservation through the certificate, but also just in general, connects with architecture?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's a possibility here at Tulane, but also requires a little bit of advanced planning is dual degree stuff. And that's not exactly what this question's asking about, but I'll say there are dual degree opportunities for people who are looking to do architecture and preservation or architecture and real estate. Those get a little more complex. And like I was mentioning, take some advanced planning to get the plan of study right. But there's also things like the certificate in preservation, or there's also a certificate in public interest design. And what those usually entail is taking a couple of classes that in many cases count both towards your architecture elective or architecture studio and preservation studio. And so there's an efficiency that's kind of built in. And that's not to say you don't have to take a few extra classes, because you do. We can't have too much of the double counting. But we have more efficient pathways to certificates if that's something that you're interested in. And I can certainly give more information about that to those of you who are interested. And you can find some of that on the website as well.
Yeah. And could you speak to too, is there historic preservation within architecture classes as well? Did you mention that?
Yeah, some of our studios include topics that are related to preservation, but but really, if that's a topic that you're really interested in focusing on, then there are research studios that are historic preservation studios that count as a research studio. And so you can, it's kind of like a both and answer. Yes, you can concentrate in that area if that's what you're interested in and get credit towards a historic preservation certificate as well, taking those classes. But they count, there is a historic preservation studio at a research studio level that counts towards an architecture degree, but allows you to kind of get that knowledge and experience in your portfolio.
Another
Awesome.
opportunity that you may have is with the elective credits, because also there is a kind of range of electives that we also combine as a kind of institution, so can go towards architecture, but also is more focused on the preservation side.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then our students here, could you talk about the process for signing up for studios? Is it a selective process? Specifically talking about design, build, and research studios.
Julian can't yet speak to that, although may have heard lots of rumors about process. But yeah, Rihanna, do you feel comfortable taking that on?
Yeah, I guess so. For the advanced studios, they do sort of a presentation series where you get to hear about the work that each of the different professors has culminated for you guys and their topics of interest. And then you rank them on a sheet, for your first choice all the way down. And there's often an opportunity for you to argue your case for why you should be in one studio over another. And then there's a committee that goes and shuffles people into the studios that they think are most appropriate for them, their areas of interest. And I will say, like, the second time that I did this series of research studios, the professors knew my areas of interest. They were aware of my thesis topic and put me in Sonsola's studio because it would be most beneficial to research that I was doing in other areas as well. So it's a really well done process, and I think that there's a lot of care put into what studios students get into.
But not everyone gets their first choice. I feel compelled to say that it is a ranked choice ballot, and there's a lot of different things we're balancing, and we can't have a studio that's 30 people large and a studio that's 3 people, and there's a lot of kind of balancing of interests and agendas and research that goes on within that, and often grad students get a higher priority just because they're here for a short and intensive amount of time, and we want to make sure they're getting they're getting the outcomes that they need out of that.
Just going to read this question verbatim. For our faculty, you mentioned students being engaged in advocacy and government opportunities. Are there any policy-oriented opportunities that promote repeatable architectural solutions?
Oh my gosh, we have an entire seminar class taught by Liz Russell, who's working on a state level, that's called Policy in the Built Environment, or the Built Environment and Policy. I can't remember exactly which, but it's specifically about policy and open not just to architecture students, but some of the allied students in other programs as well. So landscape, real estate, preservation, architecture, but really trying to dig deeper into how to design policy towards larger scale impacts and not just some site-specific intervention. And so, there's a specific class like that I can speak to, but also a lot of the work that you saw in Jess's studio, for instance, or in Sonsola's studio, where as architects, we're often looking at it through the lens of site, but we're thinking about how does this transcend just one single site or one single project.
Yeah, that's I didn't know about that one. That's cool. We had a couple questions here about what makes a good application. What are things that you're looking for in the application, but also in the portfolio? Sensolis or Emily?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of talking. Sensolis, do you want to try that one, or do you want me to jump right in?
Well, if you want, I can jump. So it depends if you are going to apply for the 3.5 years. So we suppose that you don't have any kind of background in design, which is fine, right? So maybe, your letter of interest is really fantastic, or maybe things that I don't know, maybe you work in a kind of pottery or whatever. And so it's hands-on but essentially you don't need to present anything or it's a sketch. So it's more your passion, your way of why you want to apply to the 3.5. So sometimes it's essentially how we see your ambitions, your passion for that. On the other hand, if you are a kind of advanced student because you are applying for the advanced master degree, we assume that you have a kind of background in architecture, right, or in design. So if I were you, I would select my best drawings, the ones that show your best capacity, right? You don't need to select all of them. We don't need to see every single one. And with that will be enough. But still, I think that a really good letter of interest can prove how you ambition or why you want to be here, right, with us.
Yeah, and I'll
Great.
tag on to that for our advanced standing students. A lot, not always, but often some of the both advanced standing credits, we're kind of filtering that through the lens of your portfolio as well. So if you say you've had design media in the past, but your drawings, you're really struggling to just convey basic information, then we're going to ask you to take design media again, because we want to make sure you've really got some foundational, like good baseline skills. And sometimes the scholarships are also pegged to strength of portfolio. So someone who's just got an amazing portfolio may have a few more scholarship opportunities than someone who has like an okay portfolio. And I'll say too, to tag on to Sensolis's comment about the 3.5-year student portfolios, we're assuming you're coming from backgrounds that don't involve architecture or architectural education, but it would be great to see your creative practice in whatever way you define that. So you may be making furniture in your spare time, or you may be knitting landscapes. That was literally something I saw last year. Somebody had like knitted these crazy landscapes. And whatever it is that, like, however you your creative way of being and seeing in the world and like acting is really useful for us to see, to understand your attention to detail or craft or rigor, or just like your unique lens that you bring to your work.
Awesome. Well, with that question, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. We want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you all the faculty and students for participating, giving your perspectives. After this webinar, I will send you an email. It's going to have a link to more information about the program and admissions and contact information. So I think everyone on here is very comfortable. If you have questions for a student or a faculty member, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with these people here. But yeah, we want to thank you all for coming and have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.